The Village Initiative is proud to present our 4th annual Equity Report. Each year since 2018, the Village Initiative has produced an equity report that takes stock of efforts to achieve equity in the Williamsburg-James City County schools. From our beginning, the Village Initiative has been dedicated to evidence-based advocacy in our schools. Equity Report provides an analysis of the latest data and research to guide policy recommendations. As in past years, we have partnered this year with the Social Justice Policy Initiative, housed in William and Mary's Sociology Department, to produce our equity report. We're thrilled to have worked with our student research fellows, Matt Nwaneri and Alton Coston, to produce this report. We want to start our presentation today by recognizing WJCC faculty and staff as partners in this work. The Village Initiative recognizes the tremendous efforts of all WJCC faculty and staff during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you for your commitment to educating our community's youth under such difficult circumstances. All of our students experienced the disruptions of the pandemic learning, but not in the same way. Our most vulnerable students, those whose families are facing economic hardships, homeless students, English language learners, students with disabilities, and those who were already struggling academically, were often hit hardest by these disruptions. Now the students have returned to full-time in-person learning for 2021 through 2022 school year. We must focus on equity to ensure all students' needs are met. In this year's report, we draw on data and policy reports from the Virginia Department of Education and peer-reviewed research to provide evidence-based analysis and recommendations. In 2020, the Virginia Department of Education released a roadmap to equity that provides a comprehensive, evidence-based framework to address social justice, systemic and equity disparity student outcomes, and racism in our school communities. The framework includes an equity audit tool designed to guide school leaders, efforts to center equity in their planning, resource allocation, and strategy implementation. Throughout the report, we use this audit tool to take stock of the WJCC schools' equity efforts and to raise questions about our division's current practices.
Philip, are you jumping in there?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't read the whole thing. Okay. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, teachers have taken on an increasing number of responsibilities and have had to adapt to constantly changing circumstances. The Village Initiative supports bold efforts to increase teacher salaries, more teacher work collaboration days to develop teaching resources, and long-term solutions for classroom size in elementary schools. We support all our teachers, but from an equity lens, it is critical that we do more to recruit and support teachers of color. Despite WJCC's recruitment initiatives, there has not been much progress in recruiting minority teachers. The percentage of WJCC minority teaching staff has actually decreased since the 2015-2016 school year, currently hovering around 10% as the percentage of students of color has increased. Research demonstrates that Black students who learn from at least one Black teacher by third grade are 13% more likely to enroll in college. and that every 1% increase in the percentage of Black teachers in a school decreases the suspension rate for Black students by 0.03%. 2020-21 data demonstrate a drastic disparity between the presence of minority students and minority educators at every WJCC school. Lower Lane Elementary has no minority staff, while 47% of its students are minorities. Only 7% of James River Elementary staff are minorities, despite minority students making up to 75% of the student body. Educators and parents have been deeply concerned over the learning loss that occurred during the virtual and hybrid learning last year. Overall, in 2020-21, SOL pass rates in WJCC schools generally declined, and in most cases to the lowest level since 2013, reflecting unprecedented pandemic disruption to learning for all students. However, with an equity lens, we see persistent double-digit gaps in pass rates since 2013 between white and Asian students, on one hand, and Black, Hispanic, and economic disadvantaged students. English learners and students with disabilities on the other. In some cases, these equity gaps widened significantly in 2021, particularly in math and science. We must ask our administrators, have we established a process to identify and communicate equity gaps? Have we established and published data-informed equity performance measures? Are staff members trained to identify equity needs and to utilize instructional methods to meet the learning preferences of diverse students and groups?
Research has shown that academic learning is closely related to social and emotional learning, which refers to skills to understand and manage your emotions and to set and achieve positive goals, which leads to improve academic performance, reduce stress, and positive social behavior. Now, during the pandemic, many students experienced increased anxiety, social isolation, and other disruptions as well. Nevertheless, students of color, students with economic disadvantages, immigrant and linguistically diverse students and their communities were often hit hardest by illness, experienced the stress of being frontline and essential workers, were most affected by economic disruptions and housing insecurity. Moreover, these pandemic-related stressors were layered upon ongoing trauma from historical inequities such as anti-Black sentiment and anti-immigrant violence. Now, testimonies from WJCC students actually collected by the Racial Equity Student Alliance during the 2020 school year suggest that students of color experienced the disruptions of the pandemic alongside a continuing climate of racial inequity and discrimination. Now, although our approaches to social and emotional learning target the experiences of white middle-class students and families, which can limit the benefits of this learning for our most vulnerable students and populations, and even generate mistrust and disengagement. In May 2021, the WJCC School Board commissioned Hanover Research to conduct a social and emotional learning survey to assess student needs. This survey found while many students have positive social and emotional interactions at schools, this was not the case for all students. Only 58% of student respondents said they feel like they belong at their school. 10% of students said that no one supports me when I need help. 23% of students did not agree with this statement, quote, I have at least one adult at school that I can trust. While these data were not necessarily aggregated by race or ethnicity, WJCC instructional staff reported that they need more professional development focused on equity and identifying trauma and mental health concerns. That being said, we must ask our administrators, did we commission the consultant to disaggregate our school climate survey results by race and ethnicity? And was the survey conducted in students' language of origin? An approach to social and emotional learning that ignores the distinct experiences of students of color, linguistically diverse students, and economically disadvantaged students put these students at greater risk of having their social and emotional learning needs met with discipline rather than support. In fact, in 2021, students identifying as Black, Hispanic, or multiple races accounted for 63% of short-term suspensions, yet only comprised 42% of the student population. That being said, we must ask our administrators, our school discipline referrals monitor for disproportionate representation of student groups by race or language. And also our administrators being held accountable for reducing this racial discipline gap. And all of these things are obviously interconnected from the previous slides that I discussed to this current slide. And according to data from the Virginia Department of Education, WJCC has one of the worst records in the state for disproportionately suspending Black students. This only means that WJCC is currently enacting policy that furthers the school to prison pipeline. And not only that, but they're one of the worst offenders in the state.
So one way to address the issues that Alton was discussing is to build an inclusive curriculum, which is defined by the Virginia Department of Education as a curriculum that mitigates bias and ensures that diverse groups from all rings of culture are represented, validated, and affirmed. It also ensures historical accuracy and reflection of diverse perspectives. The Village Initiative, in partnership with William and Mary, has created a rich resource for WJCC Public Schools, the Local Black Histories Project, an online archive of oral histories, community forums, films, and curated exhibits that illuminate Black histories in the greater Williamsburg area. Another strategy to address these concerns is to implement a dual language bilingual education program. These programs are increasingly considered the cutting edge approach to supporting culturally and linguistically diverse students. They promote high levels of academic achievement and bilingualism and build positive cross-cultural attitudes. In these programs, native English speakers and native Spanish speakers are grouped together to receive 50% of their academic instruction in Spanish and 50% in English. Newport News and Richmond Public Schools are working with a William and Mary expert, Catherine Barco Alva, and William and Mary alumni to implement such programs. So we must ask, why is WJCC falling behind? Students' social emotional learning also depends on fostering a culture of anti-racism in our schools. According to the Virginia Department of Education, this means acknowledging that racist beliefs and structures are pervasive in all aspects of our lives and requires action to dismantle those beliefs and structures. School leaders, educators, and students must be held accountable when they say and do things that make schools unsafe, and be held accountable to dismantle systems perpetuating inequitable access to opportunity and outcomes for students historically marginalized by race. We must ask our administrators, has our school adopted an anti-racism policy? And do we have a formalized process to investigate discrimination, racism, or bias that is communicated regularly to families, students, and staff? So this has provided an overview of the report. We encourage you all to read the full report, which will be posted on Facebook and on the Village website. The link to the full report will be also in the chat, so please circulate it widely. Thank you, and we're happy to take any questions you all have.
You saw the quality of the educators who were here. Do not tell me they could not reach those kids and save them. I know they could. It is absolutely possible. Why haven't we fixed this? Those of us in education have held on to a business plan that we don't care how many millions of young people fail. We're going to continue to do the same thing that didn't work. And nobody is getting crazy about it, right? Enough to say enough is enough.
Sitting back, reminiscing on them days. Me and the guys navigating that maze. Youngins from the bottom on that paper chase. The schools, they're trying to throw him in a cage. He was trying to beat that system. Didn't want to go out, another victim. But his teachers, man, they ain't believe in him. Drowning in the pain, king, you see him swimming. But now we older and we finna bolder. And these times got colder. And man, I'm trying to stay focused on my gene, on my grind, man. It's grind time. It's time to go, man. I said that it's my time. Could have been the next Fanny Lohama, but fell victim to the system. Can you blame him? The kid got suspended talking about the arts. Now his whole world is about to fall apart. For me and bro, man, I mean that it's grind time. We really put it on for the kids. Refuse to let them be a statistic. Never ever knew history that was black. Acting like we ain't exist. What's up with that? It's where we put the village initiative on the map. Coming freedom fighter, put the system on my back. Got the next bell hook sitting in the back. Really gold though, like extra strap. Great black stories that were never told to us. Only thing we knew was a P on the bus. Yeah, it takes a village. Can't stop this vision. Yeah, we finna get it. Yeah, we finna get it. For the truth. For the truth.
Do it for the kids because we black. We put the whole entire system on our back. Yeah, we do it for the kids because we black. We put the whole entire system on our back. Yeah, we do it for the kids because we black. We put the whole entire system on our back.
I've seen too many students that were stunted by a system that ignores potential and all their intuition. But me and them bros, see, we've been on a mission, putting in this work solely for the children. Black history so hidden in these schools. All that we were given was the master's tools. You're failing the kids, creating educated fools. And I was one of those until I finally saw the light. Beat my wings against my cage and I started taking flight. Haven't stopped since C. Maya Angelou was right. Sting like a bee, I'm my lead, ready to fight. For the children, for the children. Save the children. 40K is for the kids. Schools need to be about more than education. Make them home for that youthful liberation, leading change that can sweep across the nation. Cut back on all that silly memorization and add some art classes for some mental stimulation. Where else will these kids find a source of inspiration to see greatness? See greatness, to be greatness, to be the greatest.